And you're seeing these images for the first time too, correct, Kaylee? So we talked a bit about the message that Donald Trump had while he was inside the church and really promising prosperity, particularly for African-American voters and the community, and also promising, if as president, he would help bring jobs to Detroit. He talked about touring Detroit earlier and saying how disheartening it was to see so many closed shops. Now he's in a neighborhood of Detroit. So help me understand, or help everyone understand, how this is going to be a moment for the Donald Trump campaign to help reinvigorate, perhaps even, or even inspire more support, particularly among African-American voters, that he is in Detroit and he's doing this on this Saturday.
Yes, I think it's an important moment, especially with regard to Ben Carson. You know, anyone who knows Ben Carson's story knows that he grew up in a tough community. He did not have, great wealth. He grew up in a single-parent home, and his mother really inspired him. And he ended up being a world-class neurosurgeon. He is the example of the American dream. And unfortunately, for far too many, they're stuck in a cycle of poverty and violence. I'm speaking of inner-city communities when I say they. And Donald Trump wants to fix that. One of the things he's proposed is there are these visas called J-1 visas, where we give $100,000 out a year to foreign workers who come in and temporarily work for various businesses, and he wants to give those to people who need them, Americans who need them, Americans who can't find jobs, particularly in the inner city community. So I think Ben Carson this is an important story that he's highlighting, and he's bringing his policies to this community, which is great.
All right, Kaylee, we also have Jeremy Diamond, who is reporting there on the scene, and I understand that Jeremy is able to be with us right now, and you've got Dr. Ben Carson. All right, let's talk. What's happening there?
Hey, Frederica, we're here with Dr. Ben Carson right in front of his childhood home, actually. Dr. Carson, this is where you grew up, and you decided to bring Donald Trump here. He's just about to leave. What was it like bringing him here?
Well, this was our dream home, and we had to leave here for several years. It was always our dream to get back here, and I just wanted him to see a little bit about what it was like, what the neighborhood was like, and we also went through some of the more blighted areas of Detroit, which when I was growing up was a very prosperous city. It was once the most prosperous city in America, and has unfortunately undergone some pretty awful things. And I think maybe there are things that we can learn as a society, because in order for our country to be great again, every aspect has to be great, including our inner cities.
And we just saw Mr. Trump here. I asked him, how did it go? And he said, great. And he said he learned a lot of things. What do you think he took away from today?
My luggage. Hold on.
Okay. Looks like Dr. Carson is going to try and find his luggage, and he'll be right back with us. But this is where we are right here. We're right in front of the home of Dr. Ben Carson, and this is where he grew up, actually. And he just brought Mr. Trump here. Trump came here for just a few minutes. He walked over here, spoke with this woman down here in the driveway, who is actually the owner now of Mr. Carson's home. And he's actually back with us again. So we're going to continue.
Oh, good. That means luggage found.
Is it all okay?
You're
taking care of it. Yeah. So tell us, what do you think Mr. Trump learned from coming here and also speaking at the church service? Did he speak with people? What were the private interactions like?
He had an opportunity to speak with several people. And more importantly, he had an opportunity to see, some of the parts of the city that are not prospering, and a chance to talk to some of those people, as well as at the church. And I think it just fortifies, every time I've talked to him about Detroit and about the problems in the inner city, he gets very, very animated. He's very anxious to do something about it.
What is his plan exactly to address crime in inner cities? Because I've heard him on the stump, and he talks about jobs back, bringing jobs back, and all that stuff. But it doesn't seem like there's enough concrete specifics.
Well, there's not a one specific thing. It's a host of things. For instance, using a lot of the trillions of dollars that are overseas, repatriating that money, incentivizing it to come back, and then using a portion of it, because the stipulation would be, we're not going to tax you, but 10% of it has to be used enterprise zones to create jobs for people who are unemployed, underemployed, on welfare. And really what that does is it's twofold. First of all, it would be the biggest stimulus package since FDR's New Deal. Number two, it gets businesses and corporations once again interested in reaching out to the communities and helping people in the communities, which is what they used to do before the government took over it. And, the government has plenty on its hands without doing things that we, the people, should be doing for each other.
Right. So it seems like what Donald Trump has is an economic plan, right, for the country. But is there something specific that he needs to do to address the problems that are very different in the inner cities of America that's more than just stimulating economic growth in the country?
Well, a large part of the problem is economics. It's like in a marriage. What are the two things that make marriages go bad? Economics and sex. Well, we'll take the sex out of it. But economics, it's the same kind of thing, for a society. When things become tense economically, it creates a lot of other problems that don't need to be there. Mm-hmm. And, you look at a city like Detroit, which was once a hub of innovation, and entrepreneurial risk-taking and capital investment, and you look at what's happened to it because of the enormous number of regulations that just stifle that creativity. And that's not helpful to us as a nation. We Americans have always been creative people, the can-do attitude. We don't want to trade that for the what can you do for me attitude, because that always runs out. All the societies that have gone that way end up looking the same way, with a small group of elites at the top who control everything, a rapidly diminishing middle class, and a vastly expended dependent class. We don't need that.
When Donald Trump talks about poverty in the inner cities and he talks about crime in the inner cities, he describes a world in which you say, you walk out your door and you can get shot. And his solution to that is more police. That's what he said, is bringing more police into the communities. Is that enough?
That's one of the things that you've heard. But the thing that you haven't maybe concentrated on is him talking about providing the right kind of education and educational choices for people, because that changes the trajectory in their lives. You haven't yet heard him talking about what kinds of things we need to do in order to strengthen the family. Because, see, a lot of these young men in inner cities like this, they grew up in single-parent homes with no father figure. That creates problems because people frequently don't learn how to react appropriately to authority. And the first authority figure that they meet is a policeman or someone who's badder than they are. In either case, it doesn't work out well. And frequently, they really never even had a chance. We need to have policies that bring families together. And also, when you look at the recidivism rate in our prisons, we have 5% of the world's population and 25% of the prison inmates. That means there's a problem. He knows that, and we'll be talking more about that. But the people, they go into those prisons with no education and no skills, and they come out with no education and no skills. What are they going to do? Go right back to what they were doing before. We have an opportunity to alter that pathway. Means we also need to get involved in helping people when they finish their prison sentence to be able to obtain work and change the direction of their lives.
Do you think when Donald Trump says, what the hell do you have to lose? We spoke today with a number of community leaders who are outside the event this morning protesting, and one of the things that they said is, listen, we have a lot to lose, actually, by, our voting rights, our civil rights, the number of gains that African Americans have made over the decades. When Trump says, what do you have to lose, is that the wrong language to use?
But why would anybody think their voting rights are going away?
But is that the right language to use, I guess, to say, what do you have to lose? What the hell do you have to lose?
I can't let that question go by without saying this. Who was it that fought voting rights in the civil rights movement? Democrats. Who was it that was a party of the Ku Klux Klan? Democrats. Who was the party that was established as an abolitionist party? The Republicans. So then the Democrats said, well, what happened is, in the 60s it all changed and the Democrats became the Republicans. You've probably heard that myth yourself. That's total garbage. 1% of people
But when
changed.
we're talking about in 2016, Donald Trump saying to African Americans, what do you have to lose by voting for me? How does that language...
Well, what you have to do is listen to what he's actually saying. He's saying that 50 years of these kinds of progressive policies have not led to a good place. So, why would you continue to go down that pathway and expect something different to happen? And, there are a lot of people who want to concentrate on, well, he said this and he said this. without actually asking themselves, what is he saying? What is the actual message? And it's part of the problem that we have in America today. We don't listen to what a person is saying, we listen to how they said it. You know, case in point, go back and do some homework and look at Bill Clinton's State of the Union address in 1995. And you will find a section where he says, illegal aliens are creating big problems in our country, and they're getting welfare benefits and they're getting employed. We need to stop them from doing that. We need to deport people. We need to get border agents. Now, if Donald Trump says the same thing, they say he's a hate monger. You know, what does that say to you about our society? It says when it's the person who says it rather than what's being said, we're not using our heads.
But there is, of course, and I'm sure you would acknowledge this, a lot of hurt, it seems, in the African-American community towards the words that Donald Trump has said. You know, he's dismissed Black Lives Matter. When a Black Lives Matter protester was roughed up, he said maybe he should have been roughed up. This was back in the fall. And he's made a number of comments, you know, from the recent description of African-American lives, you know, painting it as all poverty, no jobs, all crime.
Well,
you know,
is
that language helpful? Is there a way that he can...
Well, if you ask him about those comments, though, and allow him to explain it, you'll see he says very readily, I have a lot of African American friends who are very wealthy, who do very well, and I know that the majority of black people don't live that way. But the problem is we have a very large percentage of people in our inner cities who are not experiencing any of the benefits of our society, and that's a problem for all of us. That's the real message. That's a message that really should resonate with anybody who actually cares about what's going on, as opposed to who has a political agenda.
So how many African American votes is he going to win? What percentage of the African American vote do you think that he can win in this election?
I don't know, but I do know that in the NBC SurveyMonkey poll a couple of weeks ago, he was polling at 1%. A week later, he was polling at 8%. It'll be interesting to see, because in what the African American community, the reason that they've stuck with the Democrats is because nobody else has reached out to them, and they feel they don't have any other option. I think this is a very good thing that he is actually making a concerted effort to reach out, and it's not a pandering effort, it's an effort to strengthen the entire fabric of the country, because he knows that America cannot be great if we have big pockets of dysfunction.
So that's actually the one more thing that I wanted to ask you about is Donald Trump over the past nearly 3 weeks has in every single rally speech talked about African Americans directly, made that direct appeal, which is very rare to see from a Republican nominee. But he's done so, of course, before predominantly white audiences. And we saw him yesterday meet with some African Americans, today go into a black church. How important do you think that was, and were you part of encouraging him to do that?
Well, it's important to speak before all audiences, because the problems that we are having, quite frankly, in our inner cities affect all of us. We're all in the same boat, and if part of the boat goes down, the rest of it's going down too. So it affects everybody. But I think it was very important for him to start talking about it before he came to the black community, because you want to sow the seeds of peace and cooperation before you go there, and it makes it less likely that the agitators can create a big ruckus.
So you think the fact that he made that outreach, even if it was before predominantly white audiences, helped set him up for a more receptive
Absolutely.
thing today? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Carson. We really appreciate you taking the time.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, that was a great moment of spontaneity from what was to be a tour of his home with Donald Trump, and then he took the time there to answer a host of questions there. So, Kayleigh,